Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Pickworth. I'm one of the providers here at Northwest Integrative Medicine. Well, I say here, but I'm working in my home office today, and Dr. Megan asked me to put together a video about one of my really big passion points, which is intuitive eating. I know that this can be a really challenging time of year for those of us who have a history of dieting, are living in a bigger body, or really exist in the world because we're all having one heck of a year already, right? That being said, one thing that hasn't changed this year is that I'm still seeing lots of social media posts and other media talking about dieting, weight loss, weight changing goals, resolutions, and this is really tough because what we know from the research is that diets just don't work that well. 95% of people who diet gain back the weight that they lose within 2 years. And those are not very good odds, no matter who you are, right? So it's really rare, if ever, that I'm going to recommend that a patient aim for weight loss because it's just so difficult to sustain. Folks who've been dieting for a really long time often turn to me and say, well, what am I supposed to do with food if I'm not dieting? What rules am I supposed to follow? And that's another challenge point too, because ideally we would all be able to eat without rules and just listen to the cues that our bodies tell us. And that, in its essence, is what intuitive eating is about. It's about listening to those inner cues and following your body's guidance on what to eat, how to eat, when, and how much. Because we were all born with signals on hunger and satiety or fullness. We used to listen to them when we were kids, at least a lot of us. And so intuitive eating, I find, especially for chronic dieters, is a lot about getting back into that rhythm and learning to listen to your body again. That probably sounds a lot easier said than done. So I've put together just a few tips and tricks on how to start to implement this in small ways in your everyday life. One thing that I think is essential if you're interested in intuitive eating is starting to work towards not considering good and bad foods. And this is something that's really ingrained in our culture. But if you notice that you think of certain foods as good or bad, healthy or unhealthy, it can be really helpful to take the morality out of food. Food is just food. All the food that we eat has some kind of nutrient or nutrition in it, even if it's just calories, and there's nothing wrong with that. There are also a lot of reasons why we eat food. It doesn't have to always be because every single bite we take is the most nutritious option possible. Sometimes we eat food to enjoy the way that it tastes. And maybe that sounds really foreign if you're someone who's been restricting for a long time. But one of the first steps is acknowledging that food is food and allowing yourself to eat the full gambit of foods, pending probably allergies, and giving yourself permission to enjoy those foods whenever your body tells you that that would be a good option. Again, I know that that probably sounds easier said than done. So one way that I've worked with patients to help them to reconnect with their body signals is doing a few minutes of meditation or body scan or mindfulness before eating. So this might look like a meditation app or doing just a quick body scan of spending a few seconds thinking about how different body parts are feeling, with maybe a little bit more attention given to your abdomen or your kind of tummy region. But this allows the nervous system to calm down, and it puts your digestive system in that rest and digest area, which is where we always want to be when we're eating, ideally, right? So that prepares you to be listening to your body signals better and more completely. And it also gives your body the opportunity to digest the food even better, which is pretty cool. If you feel like you are someone who doesn't even get to the hunger place anymore, which can absolutely happen with longer term restriction or dieting, I recommend trying to do some body scans or meditation throughout the day, taking just a couple minutes to check in with how you're feeling. And over time, those signals come back and they start to be a little bit more clear. So the opposite goes as well, of also checking in on your body and seeing how you're feeling at the end of a meal too can be really important, because as we start to introduce more foods back into our diet, we want to also think about how they really feel in our body. There's certainly benefits mentally to introducing those foods back, but it's important to sit with how they're physically feeling as well. So another tip that I have for chronic dieters is eating without distractions. This is probably pretty challenging for a lot of us. I know that it's really typical that we grab our dinner and eat it in front of the TV or eat it while we're scrolling on our social media. And that is one way that we disconnect ourselves from our body and disconnect from our experience of eating the food. So, to start off, I think taking at least one meal per day where you're eating completely undistracted, sitting at your table, having done your little meditation, is really powerful for listening to our body signals as well. This doesn't mean that you need to eat away from your family members or that you can't sit and have a conversation, but specifically those technological distractions seem to have a real impact on people's abilities to listen to their hunger and fullness signals. So that's a really big tip too. Again, aiming for one meal without distraction is a really good place to start. So those are my quick but powerful tips on getting started with intuitive eating. I also know that this is a really challenging process if you're surrounded by images, media, and people who are promoting diet culture, dieting, or restriction. So something that I encourage everyone to do is, if you're on social media, which I know that you are because you're watching this video, start to pay attention to the images that come on your feed and whether they seem to be reflective of diet culture or otherwise trigger you because of physical appearance of others or talking about weight loss. And I give you permission to unfollow the folks that are triggering for you. If this is someone in your personal life that you think would notice the unfollowing, another thing that you can do is mute that person, so you're not going to get their pictures in your feed, but you'll still be friends. Another really important way to avoid triggers is, I know that it's really common for friends and family to talk about weight, dieting, and weight loss together. So trying to advocate for yourself before those conversations and telling your most triggering family members, if you think they would be open to it, and friends of course, that you're trying a new approach to eating and you really want to have a healthy relationship with food. So for a while you don't want to talk about dieting, weight loss, or possibly even food. This can be tough to implement for folks that have been really talking about that with friends, coworkers, or family members for a long time, but I promise it's worth it to have those conversations. So that's a little tidbit on intuitive eating from me. If this is a topic that you're really interested in, I also know that our other body positive medicine practitioner, Dr. Josh Korn, is going to be writing a slightly more in-depth blog post going through the 10 principles of intuitive eating, so it might be really beneficial to check that out. And then of course there's always the book called Intuitive Eating. And if you have more questions about how to implement intuitive eating into your life, or would like to work with a practitioner who isn't going to frame health via the lens of just weight, You're welcome to work with any of the providers at Northwest Integrative, but especially those of us who are considered body medicine or body positive medicine providers, including myself and Dr. Korn. So I hope to meet you and we can walk this journey together sometime soon.